Well, hello everyone. Right here is like you're talking about right here is talk about is like the Indians social studies coloring activity right here, and basically this coloring activity right here talks about or say is the American. It's like if it could be like would say the Indians, if it's Romans say Indians, or if it's the American Indians or something like that. Yeah, and say like kind of like a example, like maybe kind of like say the American Indian Museum or something like that. Talk about Asian Indians or something like that. But anyway, talk about the study about the Indians. If most of us have done any type of studies, if most of us remember a little bit from like the third and fourth grade it was, and then along with the fifth grade it was that taught us like the study about the Indians. It could have been the ninth grade too, about talk about how they lived, and of course the type of clothes of course that they wore was. But basically though, working right here is like with the red though, that the part about this coloring activity right here is talking about that most of us have seen that movie. It's like reminds me of that movie Squanto. If anybody has remember hearing had watched that movie, it came out a couple years ago. They may have had a remake or something like that by now, but it's like that there was a movie called Squanto where that I can remember my parents is like my mom like that she told me that she didn't I can remember that it was over there at the elementary school, and I can remember that it was fifth grade. I think it was the fifth grade, something like that. That there was like what you call like with most of the time, if most of us know about like if their kids were to be in school, that a lot of times so that they would only allow films that such as G rated G filming. It was that there would be movies that you would be able to watch. It was, but a lot of times a lot of those movies were like say cartoon type movie that were be rated G for all ages, certified for all ages. It was a lot of times it was G, but I can remember that they were wanting to watch to the I think the fifth grade class, fifth grade class. That would have been about 1994, something like that, 1994, 1995. But I remember that they sent a note home to the parents asking them if it was okay for their child, of course, to watch the movie. It was a movie by the name of Squanto. If anybody here has remembered is familiar with that movie title, it's like for Squanto, and I can maybe write down here for Squanto. I think if I can remember right that's here Squanto was the name of the movie, and I think it was just Squanto. I don't know if it was named the Squanto, the 18th warrior of the animation or something like that. Just if I can remember right, it was just called Squanto. And I can remember that the class was watching it, that there was only about maybe 10 people in the classroom, that that was probably around Thanksgiving time too. But I can remember that there would be students that got permissions from their parents to be able to watch the movie, and I know with my parents that they didn't like me watching it because I thought that more likely it was going to be too violent. It was, and they even thought, of course, it was going to be about that if it was going to be about people killing somebody, and just like they're talking about any type of any movie such as violent, any type of violence it is, that more likely that they some of the parents, their school kids, they say that it's not, they would not allow them to watch the movie it is. But I can remember that day at school, that if I can remember right, I was put in study hall class whenever the rest of the students I gotten permission from their parents to watch the movie. And I can remember that I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was saying that the movie was pretty good. I like that, and I was telling him the details about why my parents, of course, did not want me to watch the movie. But I can remember that after he told me the details of it, that I can remember that I seen this movie at the library. If I can remember right, that either I read it or I checked it out from the library, which most of us would probably think about that with most libraries nowadays, that they would allow you, even that public libraries, that you go in there and then there's movies that you can check out. Don't cost anything. You just gotta turn it back within a certain time. A lot of times it's about 8 to 10 to 11 days or something like that they'll let you check out a movie. And if I can remember right, that I was looking for I seen that movie Squanto, Squanto, yeah, at the library it was. I'm trying to remember if I rented it or if I checked it out, and I think I checked it out at the library because anybody made me think. I'm like, yeah, whenever I was 12, 13 years old, I'm like, I was not old enough, of course, to have an account from the video store was, so I'm assuming that I checked it out. I seen it at the library, and I decided to check it out and then watch it. And I can remember I told a friend of mine, like, he asked, like, well, did you like it? Like, well, yeah, it was all right, but I noticed that there was some violence in there. I guess with most parents, like you're talking about a movie that's related to a social studies project, such as maybe the Egyptians, or if anything to do with the Indians, it is about how they lived, and of course any type of wars or battles, of course, that they faced, of course, back in those years, it is back in those times. And I can tell anybody here that with most movies, though, that it would show something like violence if it was anything related to shooting arrows or guns or anything like that. And knowing about for rated PG, it is. And a lot of times they say suggested for parental guidance. It is for strongly parental guidance, and a lot of times though that with most parents that they could say that they would not allow their kids to watch some movies such as what you call I can maybe think of some movies, of course, that maybe around Halloween time, but like for Thanksgiving it is studying about the Indians it was. But right here, I'm gonna go ahead and draw, like, say, a bow and arrow. If the Indian were to have, like, what you call things, of course, equipment on his back, it was such as, say, a bow and arrow, it is, or it's like you have feathers on the back. But I can remember this. I can tell anybody here that I can remember quite a few things from elementary years, such as that they would allow you to it was a field trip at one time talking about the Indians, and at the time I'm just wondering about that. I can actually draw too that warning about that they want you to wear that they want you to put your mouth put your hand over your mouth, it is, and then you just tap your mouth, and then they a lot of times with the American Indians to where that they have it to where that they would do like but I can remember that at the school though that they would have the kids do that to where that if you want to dress like an Indian and act like an Indian, it is that they would have it to where that have it where you hold your hand over you tap your hand over your mouth, it is, and then they would give you like a feather. If most of us remember those times from whenever we were young, it was as they would give you a feather, it was, that you can wear in back of your head. It was that it was like if I can describe it here, I'm like that. Yeah, I have a hat, and then they would give you like a band that you could wear around your head, and then from the band, and then then they would allow it to where they would give you a feather. One time it was a field trip though that I can remember. One time it was at some park that I was like that they were giving everybody feathers, and I was sitting down somewhere, and I'm like, well, I'm waiting for her to put the feather on my head. Like, well, you've already got a feather on the back of your head, and then I can remember the only way I was able to tell is if I looked myself in the mirror whenever I got back to the school, that I was able to go into the, I think, whichever way, I think I was went to the bathroom, when we got back to the school, and that was the only way I was able to tell if I had a feather in the back of my head or not. And usually that with most kids, that they say that you feel them putting a feather on the back, usually you feel that if they put a feather on the back of your head or whichever it was, just to, like, talking about like that, for exactly about what the American Indians did back at those times, it was, huh? What the American Indians did, it's like talking about, it's like if they did like but other than that, you have right here is like, say, the American Indian. But anyway, but that was like an activity, of course, that the school did. But other than that too, I'm like, other memories too. I'm like, we did buffalo skin, if I can remember right. We did an activity in like our class for like buffalo skin, it was. And other things too that like tell anybody here that you can, if you want, you can write me a comment on my channel about maybe the next thing that more likely that you would maybe like to see it is, but depending on how much time I have too. But anyway, but you have right here, you say a buffalo right here, and with the buffalo though, that they would say we would do buffalo skins, and then from there, that there was like a part, you say, of the school year to where we watched a movie. It was, based on, say, the title of it, of course, was called Squanto. It was, if most of us are familiar with that movie title, it was based on an Indian. It was who did some fighting. I think that there was a few wars and stuff that were going on during that time too. But it was, I think, during that time that that would have been about Thanksgiving time, if I can remember right. That would have been about Thanksgiving time back in 1994, something like that, if I can remember right. Try to remember all these years, because it's been about 15 years, since I was in the 4th grade. That probably would have been about 1994, because 1990, 1991, I would have been about in the 2nd and 3rd grade. It was, so it's like that, yeah, that like, trying to keep track of all these years between whenever I started preschool and then whenever I started the 1st and 2nd grade. It was, I'm thinking that 1994 would have been about the right year, and then the 1995. But anyway, but you have right here is, talk about the detail right here is like for the Indian right here, and most of us here would like talking about this, like we say with Squanto though, that was the name of the movie though, that they were talking about the movie Squanto, and asking the parents, it's like, is it okay for their kid to watch this film, and some parents that said it was okay, and some parents that said that no, it's not okay, I don't want my child watching it. And on the other hand, that I can remember whenever I seen it, that I was like that it didn't. There was some violence, and it's been a while since I've seen the movie also, but it was based on the fact about this Indian who was what you call that. I can tell anybody here, it's been a long time since I've seen the movie, but it was like, about this Indian who was I don't know if he was trying to working out that he was I don't know if he was trying to rescue a girl, and whichever it was, that there was some war or some battle that was going on between what you call like the Mosque or something like that, and then they had Thanksgiving. They would show it to where they would have Thanksgiving meal, and then there would be one or two scenes in there I think there was one time to where Squanto was fighting, I think he was fighting a bear. There was one scene to where he would be fighting a bear or something like that. But and I could tell anybody here that it's been a while since I've seen the movie, but I can remember that I only seen it maybe about 2 times back in those days, and just thinking about that some people that may think that Squanto, it was about masked murderers, and then it was about this American Indian, this Indian it was. I don't even know if he was American, but this Indian that who he was, of course, that if he was known as like what you call as like the Great Warrior or something like that. But from the parts what I can remember from the movie, it was is whenever he would fight bears, and of course he would use the bow and arrow or something like that, and but parts of the movie that I can remember watching whenever he was fighting a bear. It was, and then there was some parts of the movie that were kind of violent. It was, and I think that's mainly maybe why some parents did not want their kids watching that type of movie, because of the fact about it was rated PG, and a lot of times so that they say that some movies that that if they're going to be rated PG, it is that there's going to be some things that more likely they're going to be inappropriate. Of course, for young kids it is, and they may think that it's it has something to do. It has nothing really to do with education. It is, and a lot of times with some schools that they may say that only if it has anything to do with education it is. And I can tell anybody here that my school, they were going to show a movie such as related to and then UFOs. It was for UFOs, and I can remember back in that day that I can remember my teacher's name too, and that they were going to show that movie E.T. It was the movie E.T. and talking about UFOs. It was and apparently that they had got notified like by the principal saying that no, well, we were not. We can't watch this film because it's it's PG. It is, so that they, even in the third grade and even in the fourth grade, it was that they say a lot of the times with most PG movies that were not allowed to be shown in the schools. It was, but I whenever I was in middle school, it was with anybody who may think about that, with most of the time with most films though, that some movies that can't be shown in class because of the rating. It is, if it's rated PG-13 or if it's rated R. I know that there were some schools I went to that they say that sometimes that they would show R-rated movies. It was like if most of us are familiar with, like we say, the movie such as Gladiator, or any other type of movie that has anything to do with, I say, the Indians or the warriors, the Egyptians or anything like that, anything related to history. It was, but on the other hand, too, to talk about right here, the Indians, as far as the social studies, it is basically talking about, is like with this movie title right here. It's been a while since I've seen it. I could tell anybody here, it's been a while since I've seen it. The only thing that I can really recall is about the fact about the name of it. The name of the movie, and then of course, one scene from the movie that I can recall. And with anybody who may think about, go ahead and maybe click on it, go and search on maybe Netflix and maybe see if I'll be able to find the movie title somewhere. The title of it's called Squanto, and based on, say, on an Indian that would have, like, what you call it, extra strength to be able to fight, fight off his, his enemies, or something like that, and where he battled in some type of war. But the only thing that I really remember from the movie was back the one scene to where he would be fighting a bear. He was fighting some type of bear, punching it and then wrestling around with it. But I can remember that he would be Squanto would be fighting a bear, and that's really the only scene that I can remember, I can recall, because I can tell anybody here that I'm gonna need to watch the movie again if I can. But the only thing I can really say is that with movies, with most of the time, if they are going to be PG, it is, other than PG-13, as known about that with most of the time, with most schools, I think nowadays, that they have it to where that movies cannot be shown without the parents' permission. It was, and with some parents that they say that no, it's not okay to show this film, and but on the other hand, too, for the memories from what I can remember, of course, it's like from the talk of, say, the Indian social studies, so far as say with the color activity.